The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Thanks for joining us here on Wednesday, May 28th.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, the week, 29th, excuse
Oh,
me.
God, now
the week
we're
is
giving
almost gone. A month is almost gone.
Now we're even giving a date now. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Jeff. So
And
here
I'm
we go.
CJ.
It is Wednesday in the Riv. So where do we begin? We begin with our coronavirus update from our from the doctor, nurse, CJ. What's up? The latest report is.
All right, I'm bringing up my reports as we speak. It's going to be very interesting.
440.
I believe, 448 in Fall River. I have all kinds of stuff going on. It was interesting because the mayor gave his report yesterday via video. So we didn't have his usual printed material. But the COVID report for yesterday is 448 cases, which means we had 33 new cases. And from the state, we had 58,302 total cases, 3,153 total deaths, with new deaths 150. Bristol County cases is 3,270, with new cases statewide being 1,840. Because of this, they feel like we're starting to flatten the curve. So we may have the possibility of starting to lessen up on the home restrictions, the stay-at-home order. But the stay-at-home order has been extended to May 18th. So we're going to look at another 3 weeks of this before we start doing anything. But if you look across the border into Rhode Island, they're looking at May 9th. So I'm not sure if she's going to change hers to coordinate with ours or if she's going to stay with May 9th. If that's the case, you're going to see everyone from Fall River jumping across the border.
Yeah, they actually did a little segment, I believe, on channel 1210 this morning about, they did it from Seekonk, about border towns, and Seekonk borders East Providence, obviously. But we have the same problem with Tiverton. So they were talking about, the difference of people who have to come to work here or they shop here. Things are going to be different for them depending on where they are geographically, because they're right on the border. Because there may be a lot more open in Rhode Island for about 10 days prior to Massachusetts. And then there's also no guarantee that Massachusetts is going to lift that at the end of this cycle. So it'll all depend on the numbers, I guess.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens because, again, we're looking at, everyone's looking at the same data to lift the restrictions. And they want to see, the federal government, Washington wants to see us have 2 weeks of declines. It seems that Gina Raimondo's looking for something along the same lines of a 2-week decline, 2 weeks of no admissions to the hospital, that type of situation. I know the governor of Massachusetts is looking at the same thing, the 2-week decline, no new cases or a reducing number of cases. So it's going to be seen. But don't think for a second that this is going to mean that we're going to go right back to like everything was before this happened. We're going to be phasing this in. Things are going to be happening slowly. And again, we may never see a day where you're not wearing a mask. And we may never see a day where restaurants are the same as they used to be. So it's going to be interesting to see how this works out.
It will be. It will be. And obviously all the fallout with with everybody is not going to get their job back. because, as you said, restaurants are going to have diminished capacity. Therefore, they won't have as many customers. Therefore, they don't need as many employees. They won't make as big a profit. And there are all kinds of issues here. This morning, they had a segment on a manufacturer in Fall River who was making gowns and stuff. And Ramundo was talking about them and their Merit, I believe, Merit Manufacturing. So it's good. We're seeing a lot of this stuff, and hopefully we're coming toward the end, but then we have to look at maybe a resurgence. But again, on the other scene, what I also saw on the news this morning, which really did my heart a little, gave me a little boost. Very rarely do I see government ever doing the right thing, especially in circumstances where they're protecting the taxpayer. But I don't know if you saw it this morning, CJ, but they talked about the Providence City Council basically not having a meeting because the budget was presented to them and was not presented in time for them to make it public so the public could weigh in and look at the budget and examine the budget in depth. Wow, was that refreshing? How long have we been telling our city council to stop with the accepting no numbers and I'll get back to you? And now we have a Mary Sahady's making up, the budget of the day. It's like soup du jour, budget du jour. So we have, she's making up a budget, but then she's going to make another budget after we figure out how much we're going to get for the fence. And that's all BS because look, every department is supposed to know how much they're going to spend. They know how much the salaries are. They have projects, those are estimates, but they have to have some kind of actuarial projection, and that's how things are done. And a real budget is a real budget is a budget, and you can't have 6 different budgets. It's like the mafia cooking the books here. And that's the problem. And our city council will just nod their head at whatever they present. And the unfortunate part of this is it looks like this city may be getting bailed out for their fiscal and fiduciary incompetence because we had a pandemic. So they're going to use federal funds to plug up holes that were there, not because of the pandemic, but because of their own fiduciary irresponsibility.
Yeah, the problem with that though is number one, they don't have a number yet that they may or may not receive from the federal government. But while you're bringing that up, I like what Providence did. I think that was great of Providence to do that for the taxpayers. But I think one of the things we have to look at is the fact that this appeared in yesterday's Herald News that Fall River awaits possible deadline extension for fiscal 2021 budget. They're hoping that it gets extended. Paul Coogan's scheduled to present his version of the fiscal 2021 budget by May 15th and before the June expiration of the fiscal 2020 budget. The administration is waiting to learn whether the state will extend those deadlines. Mary Sahady, the city's director of city financial services, said she has been on teleconference calls with the State Department of Revenue the past 2 weeks. The state is struggling to meet its own June 30 deadline to create the 2021 budget, which includes appropriations for cities and towns in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic and shutdown of the economy. See, this is the problem that we have. The state hasn't even decided how much money they're going to have available for the cities and the towns. And Fall River's budget is incumbent on that money from the state. So they're basing on that. Now, what's going to happen if there's a 9C cut? What's going to happen if there's a significant 9C cut? And they're not going to happen because they're not going to take money for the cities and towns out of the stabilization fund. That's not going to happen. We don't see that happening. But if there's a significant 9C cut, what's going to happen? That they're going to start asking departments like they did last time under Bob Correa for percentages off their salaries and benefits. And, I've heard this before, and I think this is what may happen. The fire department, when that happened under Bob Correa, refused to take any pay cuts, and the police department took them. This time, I think the police department will probably say, no, we gave it up last time. we're not giving it up this time. So we're going to have to see what happens, because it's going to be a very interesting scenario. And the fact that they still don't have a budget is also kind of scary. But one of the things that Mary Sahady has said is that she has a budget ready to present. She has a budget ready to present the city council. Budgetary deadline. So it's going to be interesting to see. She has a budget to present, but how accurate is that budget? Because remember, before it had a $4.7 million gap. If you remember that.
Well, gap, deficit, you name it. And the bottom line is, listen, every budget that's ever been presented has been a work of fiction. And this only proves it again, because she's going to budget, she can give, but everything is predicated on we don't know. And this is the problem with government. The government, they tax their way to prosperity, and it's been proven you can't do that. And this city has made it into an art form. And what really, really fascinates me is you just made reference to the stabilization fund. Why? And you made the thing that we're not going to touch the stabilization fund. That's right. You know why? Because it's a slush fund. What does the word stabilization mean? It means to stabilize something that is not stable. So right now, our economic environment is not stable. So heaven forbid we use a stabilization fund to stabilize it. So we're going to be looking for handouts again. We never run a budget like the government doesn't run budgets the way people run budgets. You don't have enough money, or you have to put off your roof repair in order to take something, or you have to do a roof repair and therefore, tighten your belt. Government never tightens its belt. Never tightens its belt. The pay raises keep flowing. The political jobs keep flowing. The patronage keeps flowing. And the budget du jour keep coming. They'll just change numbers around. And like I said, to segue back, kudos to the City Council of the City of Providence for calling off the meeting. They were prepared to go in, and they said, wait a minute, this budget, we got this at the 11th hour, which is SOP. A few people who've never been in an organization that uses that, it's standard operating procedure. It's SOP for the city of Fall River to give everything at the 11th hour and turn it into we got to vote for this, otherwise we're going to go bankrupt. And we got to vote for this, otherwise the sky will fall. And this is the problem in the city of Fall River. And we've been watching our city council sit on their thumbs and never, ever do what the Providence City Council finally did. And if you watch that segment, they will say, we need for the people of Providence to be able to look at this budget and weigh in. And kudos to them.
Exactly. Well, I had a conversation, as you are aware, last night with an elected official here in the city and a city councilor, and we spoke about what happened with the boat. And I got the justification. Well, it was already bought and paid for. The other boat we had was damaged and it didn't work anymore. So what were we supposed to do? Go without a boat? And I said, don't try to justify this. This item was never brought before the city council. Therefore, it did not have the approval of the financial arm of government. You are supposed to be the financial gatekeepers. And because of you, you approved it for a small payment. And guess what? You're on the hook for it all now. Well, we needed to do this because we already owned it. We took the grant money. We did this. I said, again, justifying. It should have been brought to the city council initially. And if you had not approved the money, guess what? It's on the back of the mayor to get the money. He would have had to find it somewhere. And even then, the city council would have to approve where that money came from. But instead, you approved them taking it out of this year's budget, which is wrong. You need to learn to do your job. But they don't want to hear that.
Well, no,
They don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that they have to learn to do their job. Especially some of these city councils who've been there for 30 years.
well, it's their job to justify things that there's no process. There's a right way to do this. You put in for a grant. Why didn't anybody know we bought a boat? And listen, let's put this in perspective. The fire department had a Boston whaler. They're buying it's like replacing a kite with a Boeing 747. We needed a boat. We couldn't buy another Boston whaler. No, we're gonna buy a super duper 747. It's got an ambulance on it and everything else to take care of the waterfront, when that waterfront may never ever be developed. Now, when we get a waterfront that you may need a fireboat to fight a fire on, well, then you should buy a fireboat. So this is government at its best. You know, urinate money into a hole, buy something that's way over what you really need at this present time, looking at a deficit. 2 years it took everybody to know that we even made this purchase, and nobody's questioning the process. And you wonder why we continue to make mistakes? Probably the same way as when we sued them in 90 and 91, and they said that they screwed up the books and the books were in a total state of disarray. In 2020, they're still in a total state of disarray. So, because next year it'll be 30 years since an arbitrator said that the city's books were a total state of disarray, and the auditors from Ernst & Young said they had never in their careers seen a city with such screwed up bookkeeping. And they've audited entire states. The auditor we had audited the entire state of Tennessee, $1 trillion audit. They said they'd never seen anything like it. No records, pieces of paper stuck in a file cabinet. And Bruce Haig of Haig and Sahady testified under oath that because they have no ability to keep records, they could not do an audit. They did not do an audit. They did a reconciliation. They just made the numbers fit, which is illegal, by the way. And look at it now. That's why 30 years later, we haven't fixed it. Fall River, its council, and the way they handle our finances and taxpayer money is a disgrace. And it is a clear definition of insanity, because they keep doing the same thing, justifying it. What happened with Dominion? Oh, we got to fight this. We can't find the letter. Well, why can't you find the letter? You found it, CJ, in about 12 seconds, actually less than 12 seconds, on your telephone. But there they were, our legal beagles and eagles, but they're beagles, more than eagles. Crack financial team and crack legal team saying, well, we never were informed by the court. Everybody else in the state of Massachusetts knew how to Google, could get that. But they couldn't. And they guaranteed we were going to win this. Did we win it, CJ?
Nope. And I knew we weren't going to. If you remember, I said that the day that they were looking for that letter. Based upon what the letter said,
you wonder why we have $4.7 million deficits or gaps, $8 million with Flanagan, money always missing, windows put in and nobody can find any paperwork. Now we bought a boat. And it took 2 years, actually 3, we're in the third year, after it was purchased. And then the excuse is, well, we already purchased it. No, you actually didn't purchase it. Because as you said, unless the money was approved by the council, that purchase is invalid.
That's right.
Because the money was not approved by the damn financial arm of this government. So you're wrong, counselor. You don't have to do it. CJ is 100%. All you got to do is say, no, it's wrong. You didn't do it right. You didn't follow the process. You find the money, Mr. Mayor. And we're not going to blame. I'm not going to blame Paul Coogan for this because it's not his fault. It was Jason Carrera's administration in 2018. But guess what? The financial wizard who did this, who is, by the way, by law, bound to follow the correct process as a fiduciary, is the same person. So again, we have the same common denominator.
And that's the thing, for some reason, nobody seems to want to put together. We have these problems going back years. And what's the constant? The constant is the chief financial officer. Okay? She knew about this 2 years ago. She's not going to say she didn't. She knew about this 2 years ago because they wrote a grant for it. Nobody can find the paperwork for this vote anywhere. I've asked a couple of people, they said, and I've asked a couple of elected officials, and they're requesting. They had to request the documentation. When it was presented to the city council, there was nothing in the agenda packet that showed that it was bought and paid for. We don't know where that money went, where it came from, and who's supplying it. They say it's a federal grant. Am I going to say that it's not? No. But I've spoken to several city councilors, so I'm not going to point one out at all, because I had a similar conversation with several of them, and I said the same thing. And they all said the same thing. We found out about this the day of the briefing. Well, number one, why is the mayor holding a briefing with the city council? That's not his job. The mayor is not the city council. The city council president is the city council. They don't need a briefing. It should be clear cut to them. But the reason why they need a briefing is because they need your bullshit. They need to hear it so that they can say, oh, okay, so that's how it's being done. You want to justify it. And by the mayor holding these briefings, which many mayors in the past have done too, this isn't the first mayor to do it, that's what happens. The city council doesn't need a briefing. The city council needs it to be clear cut so they can understand it right on the paper. Not so they have to go to your office and listen to Mary Sahady or you or anyone else. The briefings, I think, are or should be illegal. And if he's meeting with 5 or more city councilors and I find that out, it's an open meeting law violation. Although when I spoke with the mayor, he says, I have met with them and we don't violate the open meeting law. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. But again, briefings should not be necessary. I don't hear other city councils doing that.
Well, let me tell you something, CJ. As a councilor once said, and we know, the mayor proposes, the city council disposes. The fact is, they are the people who do it. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the mayor does not have any right to try to have these meetings, and because they can say they're holding hands and singing Kumbaya. That's not the way the government was designed. The city council is commissioned with spending the money of the city and approving those things. So they are a check and balance. They can be in, I'm not saying they have to be adversarial with the mayor, but if they feel that this expenditure is not proper or any expenditure, and they have the right to question it, but not with the mayor, so Mary Sahady can misrepresent numbers like she always does, like the 8% for the health care, when it was 5.7. So they go behind closed doors and figure out how to make an excuse and justify their actions, as you said, to screw the taxpayer. Because the reality is, the way it should be done is, if the mayor wants to do something, he proposes it. And now his team, and he can go down to the council if he wants to and request to be in front of the council with his financial team to answer questions in the public forum of a city council meeting, so that taxpayers, the people who fund these things, the people who the mayor and the city council work for, can watch it and listen and be informed. As I said, as Providence said, we're not going to approve this budget because the taxpayers in this city have not had the time to look it over and weigh in on it. How can we weigh in on a vote? As you said, all they did was have clandestine meetings and figure out ways to bullshit their way through it. Like they did with the 22 windows that have never been solved. Maybe that's where the money came from, CJ. We can now designate that as the 22 window fund, full of magic money, where money comes from. And there's never any follow-up to determine where that money came from. Did we actually get a federal grant? When was that grant dispersed? When was that grant requested and submitted? All those questions that a person of sound mind would ask are not there, because we don't get a chance to ask them except on our show.
And the worst part about it is, with the situation we're in now, it makes it difficult for the citizens to ask the questions. It makes it difficult for the citizens to know what's going on, and especially when you're having secret meetings in the background to discuss these items. Those items should be discussed publicly, not in a private meeting or a private briefing with the mayor. The mayor has no right to have a briefing with the city council. The briefing with the city council is to tell the city council what he wants and how he wants it done. There is nothing in the charter or in the Constitution or anywhere else. The bodies are separate. One's executive, one is legislative. You don't see the president meeting with the entire House or Senate. No, he meets with the leadership, discusses what he's looking for at the leadership, gets their opinion on where they feel it's going to be, and then it goes back out. And he gets an idea of whether or not they're going to support it or not. That's about the only type of briefing the mayor should be having. He should be having meetings with multiple city councilors. There's a city council leadership. That's where his meeting should be. He should be meeting with Cliff Ponte and Pamela Liberté-LeBeau, and that's about it. And all the other city councils have to get their information from those two during the city council meeting. But if he did that, he wouldn't be able to, get his leverage.
Well, yeah. And the other thing that concerns me is something you referred to. You said in your conversation, the person said that the boat that they have is damaged. So you saying to me that we did not have a boat? So that's a public safety issue. Why wasn't, if we had a boat that needed replacing, it was damaged, why wasn't that brought before the public safety committee at the city council? Why wasn't there an emergency? If we didn't have a boat, we do need a boat, obviously. So do we need a 747 versus a Boston Whaler? I don't know. I don't think so. My opinion is, listen, if we want to fly a boat that's like the city of New York, and we want to have an ambulance and everything else on it, to do what? We don't. Our waterfront is virtually it looks like it's post-apocalyptic right now. There's nothing down there. So if they ever do develop it, maybe we will need a sophisticated state-of-the-art thing. We have been using one type of boat for a long time. It is sufficient for the demand. And as the National Fire Protection Association once said, you can't staff departments for the worst case scenario, because that would be totally cost ineffective. You can't stop. Exactly. As much as we think to, you can't staff the fire department like we're going to have a mill fire every day. So you have staffing levels, and the same thing with this. We had a boat. If they needed to upgrade the boat to a degree, that's fine. But the reality is,
Chip, I hate to cut you off, but we're out of time. Chip, I hate to cut you off, but we're out of time. I think that's what that flash was on the screen. It said,
we're out of money, too. We're out of money, thanks to the city council.
Hey, everyone, thanks for watching. Stay angry, stay safe, wear your mask, and be kind to each other. Thanks for watching.